Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 5 in my building series on the B-25D. And just to give you an update on things, so the fuselage, as you saw previously, was glued together. Now I've filled in the seam with some Tamiya putty all along the joints. The tail has been glued on, and that was important to do because I wanted to get the joints where they glued together filled in with putty before I painted them. That's why I elected to put it on before I paint it. Same thing on the bottom, I've got the seam filled in. I elected to close the bomb bay doors on the bottom, which now it's like I spent all that time detailing the inside of the bomb bay and then I just closed the doors. But I wanted to go after the box art look, which is what I said in the first video, and to do that meant the doors had to be closed. That's the way they are in the box art, because it's an airborne flight. Now I will say on the box art the gear is also retracted because it's flying, but I am going to have the gear down because obviously the plane is going to be sitting on the desk, so the gear has to be extended. But I did want to close up the bomb bay doors, kind of clean things up, and I'll be honest with you, it makes things a little bit easier. Being my first model in quite a long time, I wanted to simplify things, so I went with the closed door look. But that requires a lot of putty now to fill in the gaps. So that being said, this is just about ready to be sanded down. And once I get the wings done, and I'm going to do that next, I'll show you how I'm going to remedy that issue with the right wing panel. Then I'll get the wings glued on. Then I can fill in all the joints with more putty, sand it down, and then I can do the final paint, and we'll call it good. I did glue the tail gun in prior to gluing the horizontal stab on, which was important because once you get the stab on, there's no way to get to those guns. So they're in, and I've got the little bubble canopy here that will slide right over the guns when that time comes. So that's where we're at with that. While I was waiting to get the parts to repair the wing panel, I went ahead and finished up the engine cowlings. I glued on all the little, I guess they're little cowl vents on the cowling. These little nubs here, there were 7 of them per side, so I went ahead and did both of those for the 2 engines. And I also got the propellers cut out, trimmed, sanded down, so they're ready for paint. And when I do the black paint for the props, I'm also going to hit the tires up. I glued the tire halves together, made sure that the flat spot is together. That way, when it's sitting on the ground, it'll kind of have that flat look to it on the bottom of the tire. So I got the 2 mains and the nose gear glued up, and I've got the rims ready to go. I've got them sitting on some Q-tips right now, so I'll take them out to the paint booth and hit those with silver. But while I've got the black, I'm going to do the props and the wheels together, and then I'm going to do the silver. Hopefully I can do the rudders, the vertical fins with silver at the same time, hit the rims of the tires at the same time. So that's kind of my goal there. So let's go ahead and get into now repairing the right wing panel. If you remember, it was mismolded, I guess, or molded improperly from the factory. So we'll get to that next. Okay, so now we're going to remedy the mistake that was made when the molds were produced for this kit. If you remember, when we were assembling the right wing panel, we got the root joined up together, top and bottom, and then looking at the tip, we came out about 3/4 of an inch short. Apparently not enough plastic was injected into the mold when they did the bottom panel, and it fell short of reaching the full size. So what I first need to do is take a piece of polystyrene plastic, which I have here. This is 0.04 inch thick styrene plastic I picked up at the store, and I'm going to add this to the excuse me, to the bottom panel to create that extension, and then we'll cut that further out to match the size of the top panel, and then we'll sand it all smooth, and in theory it should come out pretty good. So let me first trace the outline of what we need to cut out. I figured I measured about right here. The second line is where we started to get some shortness, so let me line that up. I'm just gonna put the leading edge flush, and we'll go from there. So I'm just gonna trace this out. I'm gonna slide this up where you can see a little better. Okay, so now I can cut this out, and this wingtip will fit into that gap. And then I can extend this as far out as I need to match up with the top panel. So let's go ahead and cut this piece out. And is it going to be absolutely perfect from the get-go? No, it won't. But it gives me something to work with, and then I can fill in any gaps that are, because there will be a few gaps, I'm sure. But we can fill those gaps in later with putty, and then sand it all down smooth and flush. And again, in theory, a lot of theories here, but we should get a piece that looks somewhat decent and workable. And then, you know, another benefit, I shouldn't say benefit, but positive outlook is this mistake occurred on the bottom wing panel, not the top, so it shouldn't be quite as evident unless you actually pick the model up and look at it closely. You probably won't even notice that there was an issue. So now that we've got that cut out, this should slide right into there, which it does. Little gap, like I said, to be expected, but that can get filled in later with putty. So what I want to do now is get some clear plastic just to prevent the glue from sticking to the workbench. And I'm going to take some quick setting cement, and we're just going to run a bead around this seam. It is a little bit thicker than the wing panel, but that's fine. We can sand that down. It's a lot easier to do that than work with something thinner and not you know, more flimsy and not quite will hold the shape that we want. So it's okay that's a little thick. Again, that gives us something to work with when it comes to sanding. Let me fill in that gap a little bit better. All right, and then kind of peel it off plastic. Boy, it really melted that white. Kind of appears like this white plastic has a peel-off film almost. And it's kind of, well, no. It's reacting a little different than it would on normal styrene. Okay, we'll give that a minute to set, and I'll come back to the video. Okay. What I did off camera was not only allowed the thin cement a little more time to dry, but actually where there was a little bit of a gap and I was having trouble keeping the halves together, I added a little bit of thick CA glue with a little bit of kicker just to help hold it, and it bonded very well. So now, I mean, you can see this is all one piece. So now what I want to do is I want to flip it over, take the top wing panel, and I need to trace out the outer dimensions to cut off. And this I can be a little bit looser on because I can sand it down flush to the wing, but at least it gives me a starting point. I don't want to cut too far in. So let me line the pins up. Okay, get everything as it should be. Okay, now I'm going to trace again the top panel shape. And little wingtip light there, little nub sticking up, I'll account for that. So now I've got something else to work with, and I'm gonna cut it outside the line because I can sand it down into flushness. But if I cut on the line and it comes up short, then I'm gonna have to deal with putty, and that's just a kind of a bigger mess to deal with. So now I'm gonna cut this out again on the outside of the line. This is pretty thick plastic, so you need a good pair of scissors. That's for sure. Okay, so now we've got that extension on. Tell you what, I'm gonna tack that piece down just a little bit with the glue. And then give it a shot of kicker. That'll just help hold. Okay. So now I've got an extension to the wing. Oops, wrong panel. Now when I do cement this down, now I've got, again, something I can work with, sand to shape, and we should be in good order. So actually that's going to work out real well. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But once I get it, I'm sorry, I'm not doing this on camera very well, but once I get it glued up and sanded flush and then ultimately painted, I would hope that you're not going to see much of a difference or even be able to notice that this was ever like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do some sanding off camera, get that down. I'm going to glue these wing panels together. I will show you the other wing panel that I've already glued together, including the engine nacelle and the firewall for the engine mount. So, but you can see how the wingtip came out nice and flush on this side, and ultimately that's what this is going to look like once I get it all glued up and sanded flush. So let me do that off camera and I'll show you what I got when I'm done. Alright, well, just before I conclude this episode, I did want to show you the progress I've made in the background. The biggest thing to note, obviously, is the wings are now glued onto the fuselage, but the wingtip, that was not as difficult as I thought it would be, actually. Once I got the polystyrene glued into place, I sanded it to shape, and then there was a little bit of a gap between the two pieces, so I filled that in with the putty. You can see the gray there, and just let that dry, and then I sanded everything down, and it's just smooth as glass now. Of course, on the other side, you can't tell there's anything. Maybe a little more fine sanding on the tip there before I paint it, but the key is it's done. And we remedied the problem. So just remember that if you're building a kit and you run into a situation like I did where I thought the whole kit was ruined, don't ever give up. That's the key to the hobby, is don't ever give up. There's always a workaround, and I found the workaround here. Now, unfortunately, I can't zoom the camera up any higher, but I wanted to show you kind of what the plane looks like glued up. One other thing you may notice is all the putty that was down the center seam, that's all been sanded down flush. So it's ready for primer and paint at this point. Not sure how I'm going to do the primer yet, because I do have the different colors and the masking, and that's going to take some thought, but it's definitely ready for painting. And yes, if there's a dirty side, I would say the underside is the worse off side of the kit, but when it's sitting on the desk, being displayed. You're not going to see the bottom side, which made the wingtip less of a fear for me, but that actually worked out pretty nice. So there we have it. The next time you see me in this video series, we should have some paint on the plane by then. So looking forward to doing that, and we will catch you all in the next episode. Bye for now.